Nibiru. Is it real? Or is it one of humanity's greatest cosmic fears? Every time we look up at the sky, we are really facing a very old question. Is the universe a more orderly place than we think? Or could there be enormous things moving through the darkness, still unnoticed, and slowly coming closer? That is exactly where the legend of Nibiru begins. Imagine a planet, hidden far away, returning only once in thousands of years, and bringing disaster to Earth every time it comes near. It sounds like science fiction. But the strange part is this. For a while, millions of people truly believed it. Exact doomsday dates were announced. Countless videos spread across the internet. Supposed secret information kept circulating. And some people treated every unusual light in the sky as proof of Nibiru. But what is the truth? Is there really a planet called Nibiru? Or was this story created by mythology, mistranslation, modern fear, and the internet feeding on mystery? To answer that, we first need to understand something important. Nibiru is not just one thing. For some people, it is a mysterious celestial object mentioned in ancient Mesopotamian texts. For others, it is a dark planet that enters the inner solar system every few thousand years. For some, it is the home world of the Anunnaki. And for others, it is a massive threat that space agencies and governments are supposedly hiding from the public. In other words, there is not even one shared definition. And that already tells us something important. In real science, if we are talking about an actual object, its identity is clear. Its mass can be estimated. Its orbit can be calculated. Its position can be described. Telescopes can search for it. And other observers can confirm it. But when it comes to Nibiru, the story keeps changing. One day it is a planet. Another day it is a brown dwarf. Another day it becomes some invisible energy source. And another day it is described as the home of ancient extraterrestrials. That is where legend and science begin to separate. One of the names most strongly connected to the modern Nibiru story is Zecharia Sitchin. Starting in the 1970s, Sitchin interpreted ancient Sumerian and Mesopotamian texts in his own way and claimed that there was a hidden planet called Nibiru, and that beings known as the Anunnaki once came to Earth from there. According to his version, this planet had an extremely long orbit and returned near the Sun only once in thousands of years. He also linked the origin of human civilization to these beings. These ideas became very popular because they offered a huge secret. They mixed history, religion, space, mystery, and forbidden knowledge all at once. But being popular does not make something true. The reason his ideas spread so widely is not that mainstream science accepted them, but that they were dramatic, bold, and easy to turn into a larger myth. This is where we need to pause and make a careful distinction. Just because a word appears in an ancient text does not mean it refers to a planet in the way modern astronomy uses that word. Ancient sky language was filled with symbols. A star, a god, a sign, a transition point, even a ritual or omen, could later be reinterpreted by modern readers as if it were a literal astronomical object. But that is risky, very risky, because reading ancient languages is not just about translating words. It requires cultural context, historical context, symbolic understanding, and knowledge of why those texts were written in the first place. That is one of the central problems in the Nibiru story. A vague or symbolic term gets lifted out of its world and turned into a giant hidden planet. But science does not work that way. So why did so many people become drawn to the idea? Because the Nibiru story activates three powerful human emotions at the same time. The first is fear. The idea of a massive disaster coming from the sky has always fascinated humanity. Comets, eclipses, blood moons. For much of history, all of them were treated as bad omens. The second is secrecy. People are strongly attracted to hidden knowledge. The sentence, "They are not telling you the truth," is often more powerful than truth itself. The third is the feeling of being one of the few who know what is really happening. If you believe you know a cosmic secret that most people do not, you stop seeing yourself as ordinary. And that is exactly what the Nibiru story offers. It tells you, official institutions are lying. History books are incomplete. Ancient texts already revealed the truth. And you are one of the few who can see behind the curtain. That psychological structure is one of the main reasons conspiracy theories spread so easily. But when we move to the scientific side, the picture becomes much clearer. If a massive planet like Nibiru were truly approaching the inner solar system, hiding it would be almost impossible. Because large objects do not simply exist. They influence everything around them. They affect the orbits of planets. They disturb the motion of smaller bodies. They can be detected by telescopes, infrared surveys, and even amateur astronomers. A giant object moving closer would not stay invisible. It would leave fingerprints all over the solar system. And that is why astronomers reject the idea of a doomsday Nibiru. A truly massive object approaching Earth would already be obvious to observers around the world. At this point, some people say, but what if it cannot be seen? And that is where conspiracy thinking becomes very difficult to challenge. If there is no evidence, that absence is not treated as a problem. It becomes part of the theory. If you cannot see it, that means it is hidden. If astronomers deny it, that means they are covering it up. If no data supports it, that means the data has been erased or manipulated. In that kind of system, the claim becomes impossible to test. And a claim that cannot be tested is not scientific. Science is powerful precisely because it allows itself to be wrong. A real theory takes a risk. It makes predictions. It can fail. And if it fails, it is revised or abandoned. But most Nibiru stories do not disappear when predictions fail. They simply move the date. And that has happened many times. Especially in the years leading up to 2012, Nibiru doomsday claims exploded online. The story was mixed with the Mayan calendar. Countless end-of-the-world videos spread across the internet. Exact dates were announced. Then those dates passed. Nothing happened. And a new date appeared. Then another. Then another. In real science, a failed prediction creates a serious problem. In doomsday belief systems, a failed date often becomes the beginning of a new story. That is one of the strongest signs that Nibiru behaves more like a modern myth than an actual astronomical object. Now we come to a very important distinction. Nibiru is not the same thing as Planet X or Planet 9. This confusion happens all the time online. In astronomy, some researchers have explored the possibility that there may be an undiscovered large planet far beyond Neptune. This idea exists because certain distant objects in the outer solar system seem to show unusual orbital patterns. So what scientists are talking about here is not a world-ending planet racing toward Earth. Quite the opposite. If such a planet exists, it would be extremely far away, moving along a huge orbit, and very difficult to detect directly. That is a completely different idea from the internet version of Nibiru. So we are really dealing with two separate worlds. On one side, there's the pop culture version of Nibiru. Ancient secrets. The Anunnaki. Hidden truth. An approaching catastrophe. On the other side, there's a scientific hypothesis about a possible distant planet in the outer solar system. The first one feeds fear and spectacle. The second one depends on math, data, and observation. The first one promises certainty. The second one says, we are not sure yet. And that difference matters. Science does not need dramatic certainty to function. In fact, one of its greatest strengths is that it can admit uncertainty. So why do some astronomers take the idea of a distant, ninth planet seriously? Because certain small bodies in the outer solar system seem to have orbital features that are not easy to explain. In 2016, researchers argued that these patterns might point to the gravitational influence of an unseen planet. According to some models, if such a planet exists, it could be more massive than Earth and might take thousands, perhaps even tens of thousands, of years to complete a single orbit around the Sun. But this is the part that must be said clearly. Possible does not mean confirmed. Interesting evidence does not mean discovered. It means maybe. It means keep observing. It means the case is not closed. And that is one of the hardest things for people to accept. The human mind does not enjoy the sentence, there is evidence, but it is not conclusive. Because that sentence requires patience. It requires comfort with uncertainty. It requires subtle thinking. But internet culture prefers harder headlines. Found, hidden, proven, fake. The middle ground rarely goes viral. That is why even a serious scientific hypothesis like Planet 9 can be pulled into the orbit of a story like Nibiru. But real astronomers do not rush to certainty. They remain cautious because the sky can mislead us. Data can be incomplete. There can be other explanations. New observations can weaken an old model. In science, that is not a weakness. That is the very reason science can be trusted. That another reason the Nibiru myth became so powerful is that it is not just about astronomy. It connects itself to ancient civilizations, lost knowledge, forgotten history, gods, floods, ancient astronauts, and hidden technology. Because of that, it stops being a simple question like, is there a planet or not? It becomes part of a much larger worldview. For many people, belief in Nibiru is really a belief that human history is not what we have been told. That ancient myths may be distorted records of real events. That old texts may contain evidence of contact with non-human beings. And that the modern world is suppressing a great truth about humanity's past. That is why Nibiru pulls people in so strongly. It is not just about the sky. It is about the origin of civilization itself. But we have to be careful. A story being powerful does not make it true. A compelling narrative is not the same thing as strong evidence. The idea that ancient people might have mistaken advanced visitors for gods sounds fascinating. But it would require extraordinary proof from history, archaeology, language, and astronomy all at once. You cannot build that case just by reinterpreting symbols in a dramatic way. Because the human brain is extremely good at finding patterns, even when those patterns are not really there. We see faces in clouds. We hear meaning in noise. We look at an old image and believe we can see modern technology inside it. That pattern-seeking instinct is one of the brain's most powerful abilities. And one of its most misleading. The internet helped the Nibiru story grow for another reason too: images. a giant red sphere in the sky. A second light near the sun. Shaky phone footage. Strange lens flares. Heavily filtered photos. All of these can look convincing to someone who does not know how easily visual distortion happens. But a second bright object in a video can be caused by lens reflection. Unusual light near the sun can be an optical effect. Atmospheric conditions, dust, poor camera sensors, compression artifacts, or outright editing can create dramatic illusions. Astronomical images require careful interpretation. A single video, a single photograph, a single viral clip cannot prove the existence of a massive hidden planet. So can a giant planet remain hidden at all? In one limited sense, yes. If an object is extremely far away, it may be difficult to detect. That is exactly why a distant planet 9 remains a possibility. But that also destroys the Doomsday version of the Nibiru story. Because if it is truly far away, it is not an immediate threat to Earth. And if it is close enough to threaten Earth, then it is far too close to stay hidden. Both claims cannot be true at the same time. You cannot say, it is huge and coming toward us, and also say, no telescope on Earth can detect it. That is a contradiction. At this point, some viewers may ask, but have scientists not discovered unknown things before? Of course they have. New planets, new moons, new galaxies, new black hole evidence. Science keeps revealing things we once did not know. But that fact does not automatically support every extraordinary claim. The question is not whether unknown things can exist. The question is whether a specific claim is supported by evidence. Neptune, for example, was predicted mathematically before it was directly observed. That is why Planet 9 is interesting. It is tied to orbital behavior that can be studied. But the popular version of Nibiru is usually not based on measurable astronomical evidence. It is built from reinterpretations, internet fear, and apocalyptic predictions. That is why the two cannot be treated as if they belong to the same category. There's also a cultural side to all of this. In every era, humanity has imagined some great event descending from the sky. In the ancient world, it might have been the anger of a god. In the Middle Ages, it might have been a terrible omen. In the modern age, it becomes a hidden planet and cosmic collision. The costume changes, but the fear remains the same. We are afraid of the unknown. And when we give the unknown a name, it feels easier to grasp. In that sense, Nibiru has become a modern mythological name. Like ancient monsters once did, it represents a powerful force that could shatter order. What makes this even more interesting is that modern access to information has not only increased knowledge, it has also helped conspiracy theories spread faster. Because the internet places verified science and dramatic speculation side by side on the same screen. On one side, you have calm explanations. On the other side, you have titles like The Truth They Hid or Watch Before This Gets Deleted. Which one spreads faster? Usually the second one. Because fear is fuel. Mystery is fuel. And when fear and mystery combine, people click, share, comment, and help the story grow. In the digital age, myths do not need campfires. They need thumbnails and titles. But to be fair, Nibiru-like topics are not fascinating only because people are easy to fool. They are fascinating because they touch something very deep. They force us to ask big questions. How safe are we in the universe? How well do we actually understand our own solar system? Could there still be major surprises waiting in the dark? These are valid questions. Science itself lives on those questions. But science does not invent answers just to make the story more exciting. When it does not know, it says, "We do not know." And maybe that is one of the hardest things to accept, and one of the most honest. There are even people who want Nibiru to be false, and people who want it to be true. The first group wants reassurance. The second group wants a great hidden reality to emerge. Because for some people, a normal universe feels less exciting than a universe filled with cosmic secrets. Nibiru offers a kind of escape. If hidden worlds exist, then life feels bigger. History feels stranger. And humanity feels more important. But reality is often quieter. And sometimes the most surprising thing is not that the frightening stories are false, but that the universe is already more extraordinary than those stories need it to be. Think about it. Even now, the solar system is not a finished story. There are still unresolved questions. Distant, icy bodies. Strange orbital behavior. Vast regions we continue to study. The outer solar system is still full of mystery. We are still learning. We are still searching. But that does not mean every speculation is true. It means we must learn to separate real uncertainty from fake certainty. Real uncertainty asks questions. Fake certainty arrives with all the answers already prepared. So let us return to the main question. Is Nibiru real? If by Nibiru we mean the internet version, a hidden world tied to the Anunnaki, rushing toward Earth and bringing disaster, then based on current evidence, no. There is no confirmed planet like that. But if we mean the possibility that there could be a still undiscovered large planet, far out in the solar system, then the answer is more careful. Maybe it is possible. But that would not be Nibiru in the popular Doomsday sense. That would be a completely different scientific question. One still being investigated. And maybe that is where the real power of Nibiru lies. Not in the sky, but in the human mind. Because this story reminds us of something timeless. Human beings always want to give a face to the unknown. Sometimes that face is called a god. Sometimes fate. And sometimes a planet. But whatever name we give it, the deeper struggle is always the same. Fear against knowledge. Myth against evidence. The story we want to hear against the truth we are willing to accept. The sky is still full of mysteries. Maybe one day a new planet really will be found. Maybe our map of the solar system will grow. Maybe some things that seem impossible today will be explained tomorrow. Science is open to that. But science also says something else. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And the Nibiru story, at least in its popular form, has never crossed that threshold. So the most honest answer we can give today may be this. Nibiru is probably not a real approaching doomsday planet. But it is a very real modern myth. One that reflects human fear, human curiosity, and our endless desire to find meaning in the dark. And maybe the final question is not, is Nibiru real? Maybe the real question is, why do we care so much whether it is real or not? Because sometimes what we are searching for in the sky is not a planet, but a reflection of our own fear. Sometimes what feels like something approaching from the darkness is not a celestial object, but our discomfort with uncertainty. And sometimes a myth survives not because it is true, but because it reveals something true about us. Nibiru may not be a real planet, but it is a real idea, a real fear, a real internet legend, a real modern mythology. And that is exactly why people keep talking about it. Because even when the sky is silent, The human mind continues creating its own stars and its own monsters.